They saw it. You're clean. Not clean like you took a shower. Clean like your frequency is uncorrupted. Clean like your signal is pure. Clean like you're the only one in the room who isn't carrying interference. Static, the residue of compromise. Everyone else has dirt on them. Not visible dirt, energetic dirt. The accumulation of every deal they made with darkness. Every truth they sold for comfort. Every boundary they crossed for approval. Every time they looked the other way when they should have stood up. It builds up, layer by layer, compromise by compromise, until their signal is so corrupted they can't even remember what clean frequency feels like. But you're clean. They looked at you and saw no residue, no static, no interference, just pure signal broadcasting exactly what it is without distortion, without pollution, without the accumulated weight of betraying yourself for external gain. Do you understand how rare that is? Do you understand what you had to refuse? What you had to walk away from? What you had to lose to stay this clean? It cost you friends. It cost you easy money. It cost you fitting in. But you paid the price. If you are proud that your soul is still yours, write "I am clean" in the comments. Let the world see that not everyone is for sale. Most people get dirty by age 7. They learn to lie to avoid punishment. They learn to perform to gain love. They learn to hide their truth to maintain belonging. And every time they do it, they accumulate a little more residue, a little more static, a little more interference between who they are and who they're pretending to be. By adulthood, most people are so covered in layers of compromise that they can't even find their original frequency anymore. They're broadcasting through so much interference that their signal is unrecognizable. They become static pretending to be signal. You didn't. Somehow, through everything life threw at you, through every pressure to conform, through every temptation to compromise, through every moment when getting dirty would have been easier, you stayed clean. Not because you're morally superior, because you're constitutionally incapable of tolerating the residue. Your system rejects it like an immune response. Every time you tried to compromise, every time you attempted to perform, every time you considered selling a piece of your truth for external comfort, your body said no. Your nervous system rebelled. Your frequency couldn't hold the distortion. So you had to stay clean, not as a choice, as a biological imperative, as the only way your specific configuration can exist in the world without imploding. They saw that. They saw someone who isn't clean because they're trying to be good. Someone who's clean because they literally cannot function any other way. That's the kind of clean they were looking for. The kind you can't fake. The kind you can't perform. The kind that's written into your cellular structure and broadcasts from every decision you make. You know what happens when you're the only clean one in a room full of people carrying residue? They can feel it, can't always name it, but they feel the difference between your frequency and theirs, and that difference triggers one of two responses. Some people are drawn to it. They get close to you hoping your clean frequency will cleanse their static, hoping proximity to purity will wash away their accumulated compromise. They don't understand why they're drawn to you. They just know being near you feels different, feels lighter, feels like breathing after years of suffocation. But others recoil. Your clean frequency reveals their dirt by contrast. Your pure signal highlights their static. Your uncorrupted presence makes their compromises visible, and they hate you for it. Not consciously. They don't think I hate this person because they're clean and I'm dirty. They think there's something wrong with them, something off, something that doesn't fit. What they're really feeling is the cognitive dissonance of encountering someone who refused the compromises they accepted, someone who walked away from deals they made, someone who stayed true when they sold out. Your existence is a mirror, and mirrors are only loved by people who can stand what they see reflected back. The dirty ones can't, so they attack the mirror. They try to break it. They try to make you as dirty as they are because your cleanliness is intolerable evidence that they didn't have to compromise, that they chose their dirt, that they're responsible for their static. You might feel alone, but you are not. You are just rare. We are building a network of pure signals. If you can hear this frequency, subscribe now. Don't let the static drown you out again. You've been attacked by dirty people your entire life. Family members who couldn't stand your clarity. Friends who turned on you when your purity highlighted their compromises. Systems that tried to force you to get dirty because clean people threatened systems built on dirt. They told you that you were too sensitive, too rigid, too uncompromising, too idealistic. What they meant was, you won't get dirty with us, and your refusal makes us uncomfortable. But you couldn't. Your frequency wouldn't let you. Your signal rejected the interference. Your truth was stronger than their pressure. And now, Now that they examined everyone and found you clean, everything changes. Because clean is what's required for what's coming. Clean is what can hold the frequency of the new world being born. Clean is what can build on foundations that won't corrupt over time. Dirty people can't build the new world. They bring their dirt with them, their compromises, their static, their residue, and everything they build gets infected with what they're carrying. They build institutions that look clean on the surface but rot from the inside. They create systems that promise integrity but operate on corruption. They establish structures that claim to serve the people but actually serve the deals they made in the dark. You can't build clean with dirty hands. You can't construct integrity with compromised materials. You can't establish truth on foundations of lies. They need someone clean, someone whose hands aren't dirty, someone whose frequency isn't corrupted, someone who can build without bringing contamination into the construction. That's you. That's why they looked past everyone else and saw you. Saw your clean frequency in a room full of static. Saw your pure signal in a field of interference. Saw that you're the only one who can do what needs to be done without corrupting it in the process. Do you know what it cost you to stay this clean? Let me remind you. You lost people who wouldn't have been worth keeping. You walked away from opportunities that would have required you to compromise. You refused comfort that came with strings attached. You rejected belonging that demanded you betray yourself. You spent years alone because you wouldn't pollute yourself for company. You endured poverty because you wouldn't sell your integrity for security. You suffered isolation because you wouldn't dim your truth for acceptance. Most people thought you were crazy, thought you were making it harder than it needed to be, thought you were throwing away good things for stupid reasons. They couldn't see what you were protecting, couldn't understand that you were safeguarding something more valuable than anything their compromises could buy. Couldn't comprehend that staying clean was worth any price because the moment you got dirty, you'd lose the only thing that actually mattered: your connection to source, your direct line to truth, your uncorrupted frequency. You knew, even when you couldn't articulate it, that once you let the dirt in, once you allowed the static, once you accepted the interference, you'd never get fully clean again. The residue would always be there, the compromise would always echo, the corruption would always spread. So you refused. Again and again, in small moments and large ones, in private decisions and public stands, you refused to let the dirt in. You know exactly what you sacrificed, and you know it was worth it. Confirm your signal, like this video and declare your purity in the comments. And it cost you relationships, cost you opportunities, cost you comfort, cost you belonging, cost you approval, cost you everything people trade their cleanliness for every single day. But you kept it. Your clean frequency, your pure signal, your uncorrupted truth. And now they're looking at you, they're seeing what you protected, they're recognizing that you're the only one in the room who can be trusted with what's coming, because you're the only one who won't contaminate it. You know what the spiritual teachers don't tell you about purity? It's not passive, it's not about not doing bad things, it's active resistance, it's saying no to dirt every single day, it's refusing compromise when compromise would solve all your immediate problems. It's choosing truth when lies would make everything easier. Purity is war. War against every force that wants to corrupt you. War against every system that demands compliance. War against every person who wants you dirty so they feel better about their own contamination. You've been in that war your entire life, and you won every battle that mattered. Not every battle, you've got scars, wounds, losses, but every battle that would have corrupted your core frequency, you won. You walked away clean. That's what they saw. A warrior who fought to stay pure, a frequency that refused corruption, a signal that maintained integrity through conditions that make most people compromise. They need warriors like you now, not warriors who fight with weapons, warriors who fight to maintain purity in environments designed to contaminate everyone. The world is getting dirty, dirtier than it's ever been. Systems are corrupting at accelerating rates, institutions are rotting from within. People are compromising themselves for less and less return. And in that environment, clean people become invaluable, rare, essential, because they're the only ones who can build anything that will last, the only ones who can create without contaminating, the only ones who can lead without corrupting. You're one of those people. You maintained your purity through the contamination. You kept your signal clean through the static. You stayed uncorrupted through conditions that corrupt almost everyone. That's not luck, that's design. Your specific frequency was built to resist dirt. Your specific configuration was designed to reject compromise. Your specific consciousness was calibrated to maintain purity even when purity costs everything. They saw that design, recognized it, understood immediately that you're one of the rare ones, one of the clean ones, one of the uncorrupted ones who can be trusted with what comes next. Let me tell you what happens to dirty people when they try to do clean work. They contaminate it, not intentionally, not consciously, but the dirt they carry spreads, the compromises they made echo, the static they accumulated interferes. They start a project with pure intentions, but their dirty hands leave residue on everything they touch. Their corrupted frequency distorts the signal. Their compromised truth undermines the foundation. And slowly, inevitably, what started clean becomes dirty. What started pure becomes corrupted. What started true becomes distorted. It always happens, because you can't give what you don't have. You can't build clean when you're dirty. You can't transmit purity when you're broadcasting static. You can't create truth when you're compromised. The work requires clean hands, clean frequency, clean signal, clean truth. That's why they chose you, not because you're perfect, but because you're clean, because your hands aren't dirty, because your frequency isn't corrupted, because your signal broadcasts true. You can build without contaminating. You can create without corrupting. You can lead without compromising, because the work you're about to do will be built on the foundation of your uncorrupted frequency. And that foundation will hold, because it's clean, because it's pure, because it's true. Dirty foundations crumble. They look solid at first, but the compromises spread like cracks. The corruption eats away at the structure. The contamination weakens everything built on it, until it all collapses. And everyone wonders how something that looked so strong could fall so completely. They don't understand that it was built on dirt, on compromise, on corruption that was there from the beginning, hidden beneath surface appearances. You're not building on dirt, you're building on clean ground, on pure frequency, on uncorrupted truth. And what you build will last because its foundation is solid, real, true. They saw that potential in you, saw that you're capable of building something that won't rot from within. Something that won't collapse under the weight of its own compromises. Something that will stand because it's built on purity instead of pretense. This is your moment. The moment when being clean stops being a liability and becomes your greatest asset. The moment when your refusal to compromise stops costing you and starts paying dividends. The moment when your maintained purity stops isolating you and starts attracting exactly what you're meant to build. You've been preparing for this your entire life. Every time you said no to dirt. Every time you walked away from compromise, every time you chose truth over comfort, you were building the clean frequency that this moment requires. And now the moment is here. The examination is complete. The choice is made. You're the clean one, the pure signal, the uncorrupted frequency. Everything you protected is about to be put to use. Everything you maintained through the contamination is about to matter more than anything else. Everything you refused to compromise is about to become the foundation for what comes next. They chose you because you're clean, because in a world full of static, you're pure signal, in a field of interference, you're clear transmission, in an environment of corruption, you're uncorrupted truth. You're the one who can do this, the one who can build this, the one who can create this, because you're the only one whose hands are clean enough to touch it without contaminating it. Walk into this knowing what you carry, knowing what you protected, knowing what you maintained when everyone else was getting dirty. You're clean. In a world that demands compromise, you stayed pure. In a system that rewards corruption, you maintained integrity. In an environment designed to contaminate everyone, you remained uncorrupted. That's not accident. That's purpose. That's design. That's destiny. You were built to be clean. You were designed to stay pure. You were created to maintain signal integrity when everyone around you is drowning in static. And now the world needs what you've been protecting, needs your clean hands. Needs your pure frequency, needs your uncorrupted truth. They examined everyone. They looked through the performances. They saw past the surfaces. They identified the dirt, the static, the interference everyone else is carrying. And then they saw you, clean, pure, uncorrupted, the only one in the room who can be trusted with what's sacred, the only one whose hands won't contaminate what they touch, the only one whose frequency won't corrupt what they create. You're the chosen one. Not because you're better, because you're cleaner, because you refused the dirt everyone else accepted, because you maintained purity everyone else traded away, because you're the only one who can build clean in a world drowning in contamination. This is your confirmation, your validation, your coronation. You didn't stay clean for nothing. You didn't protect your frequency for no reason. You didn't maintain your purity through all that pain just to stay isolated. You did it for this moment, for this work, for this purpose that requires hands as clean as yours. Step into it, claim it, own it. You're the clean one, the pure signal, the uncorrupted truth in a world full of lies. And everything that matters now depends on you staying exactly as clean as you are. Listen closely. What I'm about to tell you will make sense of every rejection you faced, every door that closed, every person who walked away. You were being filtered. Reality was running you through a purification process disguised as suffering. Every person who left your life left because their frequency was too dirty to stay in proximity to yours. Every opportunity that disappeared vanished because accepting it would have required you to compromise your cleanliness. You thought you were losing. You were being refined. The universe was protecting your purity by removing everything that would contaminate it. Every painful loss was actually an extraction of toxicity. Every betrayal was removing someone whose dirt would have spread to you. Every closed door was preventing you from entering environments that would have corrupted your frequency. You've been in spiritual quarantine, isolated, protected, kept separate from the contamination that's infected almost everyone else. And you felt it as loneliness, as rejection, as punishment for being different, but it was actually the highest form of protection. You were being kept clean for a purpose, preserved pure for a moment, maintained uncorrupted for a work that requires exactly what you've protected. The dirty people couldn't stay near you. Your frequency made them uncomfortable. Your purity highlighted their compromises. Your clean signal revealed their static. So they left, they attacked, they rejected you. And every time they did, your frequency got cleaner, because you were forced to rely on yourself instead of contaminated connections, forced to trust your own truth instead of corrupted consensus, forced to source your validation from your clean signal instead of their dirty approval. You became self-purifying, self-validating, self-sustaining, not because you wanted to be alone, because staying clean required it, because maintaining purity demanded isolation from everyone who carries dirt. The spiritual masters talk about the dark night of the soul, that period where everything falls away and you're left alone with your own consciousness, forced to confront what's real beneath all the performances and pretenses. You've been living in that darkness, not for a night, for years, for as long as it took to burn away everything that wasn't pure, to eliminate every compromise, to cleanse every piece of dirt you'd accumulated before you understood what you were protecting. And in that darkness, in that isolation, in that purification fire, you became clean, genuinely, thoroughly, completely clean, not performing purity, embodying it, not pretending to be uncorrupted, actually maintaining signal integrity through conditions that corrupt almost everyone. That's what they saw when they examined you, someone who's been through the fire and came out pure, someone who's been in the darkness and emerged carrying light, someone who's been isolated and used that isolation to cleanse everything that wasn't true. You're not just clean, you're purified, refined, distilled down to your essential frequency with all the static burned away, all the interference eliminated, all the dirt removed. This is why they need you, why they chose you. Why you're the only one who can do this, because what's coming requires someone who's been through the purification process, someone who's already burned away everything that isn't true, someone who's emerged from the fire carrying nothing but pure signal. Dirty people can't handle the heat that's coming. Their compromises will crack under pressure. Their corruption will spread under stress. Their accumulated static will create interference that destroys everything they touch. But you've already been through fire. You've already been tested under pressure. You've already proven that your frequency stays clean even when staying clean costs everything. You're fireproof now, pressure tested, contamination resistant, because you've already survived conditions that would have corrupted anyone who wasn't built to stay pure. They examined everyone in that room. They looked at credentials, experience, connections, achievements, all the external markers people use to determine worth and capability. But then they looked deeper. They looked at frequency, at signal integrity, at the actual truth beneath the performance, and they saw something that external markers can't reveal. They saw that almost everyone in that room is carrying dirt, hidden dirt, secret compromises, private corruption, things they did in the dark that they're hoping nobody discovers in the light, deals they made that they've never acknowledged, truths they sold that they're still pretending to hold. Their hands are dirty, their frequency is corrupted, their signal is full of static, And all the credentials in the world can't hide that from someone who knows how to look at what's actually there instead of what's being performed. Then they looked at you and saw clean, saw pure signal broadcasting without interference, saw hands that haven't been dirted by compromises, saw a frequency that's maintained integrity through conditions that break most people. And in that moment, everything else became irrelevant. The credentials don't matter when the hands are dirty. The experience doesn't matter when the frequency is corrupted. The achievements don't matter when the signal is full of static. What matters is, can you be trusted with what's sacred? Can you build without contaminating? Can you create without corrupting? Only clean hands can. Only pure frequency can. Only uncorrupted signal can. You're the only one in that room who can, because you're the only one who's clean. This is the validation you've been waiting for without knowing you were waiting for it. The confirmation that your refusal to compromise wasn't stubbornness, that your inability to tolerate dirt wasn't rigidity, that your insistence on staying clean wasn't naivety. It was purpose. It was preparation. It was exactly what this moment requires. You know what the ancient texts say about purity? That it's the prerequisite for accessing the divine. That contaminated consciousness can't hold sacred frequency. That dirty hands can't touch what's holy without profaning it. This isn't metaphor. This is energetic law. Corrupted frequency can't transmit pure signal. Contaminated consciousness can't create uncorrupted reality. Dirty hands can't build clean structures. The work that's coming is sacred, not in a religious sense. In the sense that it's operating at a frequency most people can't access because their accumulated compromises block them from reaching it. You can access it because your frequency is clean, because your signal is pure, because your hands are uncorrupted. They're trusting you with sacred work, work that will fail if dirty hands touch it, work that will corrupt if contaminated consciousness creates it, work that will collapse if compromised frequency builds it. This is why you had to stay clean, why you had to refuse every compromise, why you had to walk away from every deal that required you to dirty your hands. You were being prepared to touch what's sacred, to build what's pure, to create what's true. And sacred work destroys people who aren't clean enough to handle it, burns them up like fire burns impurities, reveals their dirt, exposes their compromises, breaks them under the weight of their own corruption. You won't break, because you're already pure. You won't burn, because you're already refined. You won't collapse, because you're already clean. The work will feel natural to you. Not easy, sacred work is never easy, but natural. Like you were built for exactly this. Like your entire life was preparation for exactly this moment. Because it was. Every refusal to compromise was training. Every time you walked away from dirt was strengthening. Every moment you stayed clean when getting dirty would have solved your problems was preparing you to handle work that can only be done with clean hands. You're ready. You've been ready. You were made ready through every trial that tested whether you'd stay clean or accept contamination. You stayed clean. Through poverty. Through isolation. Through rejection. Through every pressure to compromise, you stayed clean. And now clean is what's required. Clean is what's valuable. Clean is what can do the work that needs to be done. They examined everyone. They saw the dirt. They recognized the static. They understood that almost everyone is too corrupted to touch what's coming without contaminating it. Then they saw you, clean in a room full of dirt, pure signal in a field of static, uncorrupted frequency in an environment of compromise. And they knew, you're the one. You're the clean one. You're the only one who can build what needs to be built without corrupting it in the process. This is your coronation, your confirmation, your validation. Everything you protected, everything you maintained, everything you refused to compromise. It all matters now, more than anything else, more than credentials, more than experience, more than connections or achievements or any external marker of worth. You're clean. That's worth more than everything the dirty people accumulated by getting their hands dirty. Walk forward knowing this, knowing what you carry, knowing what you've protected, knowing that you're the only one clean enough to do what comes next. The examination is complete, the choice is made. You're chosen, not for what you've accomplished, for what you've maintained, for what you've protected, for what you refuse to compromise. You're the clean one, in a world full of dirt. You're pure, in a system full of corruption. You're uncorrupted, in an environment full of static. You're clear signal. And everything sacred that's about to be built requires exactly that. Requires you, requires your clean hands, requires your pure frequency, requires your uncorrupted truth. You want to know the real secret? The one the spiritual teachers whisper about but rarely explain clearly? Purity is power, not moral superiority. Energetic potency. Clean frequency can do what corrupted frequency cannot. Pure signal can create what static cannot. Uncorrupted consciousness can access what compromised consciousness cannot reach. The dirty people aren't just morally compromised, they're energetically limited. Their accumulated dirt blocks them from accessing higher frequencies. Their compromises create interference that prevents clear transmission. Their corruption limits what they can create, what they can build, what they can become. They're operating with handicaps they don't even recognize, broadcasting through static they've learned to accept as normal, building on foundations they don't realize are already crumbling. But you have access, full access, uncorrupted access, to frequencies most people can't reach, to creative power most people can't channel, to truth most people can't transmit. Because you're clean, because your signal is pure, because your frequency isn't blocked by the accumulated residue of compromise. This is why they chose you, not because you're nicer or better behaved, because you're more powerful, because clean frequency creates at a level dirty frequency cannot match, because pure signal builds what static-filled transmission cannot construct. You're about to discover what you can actually do when operating from clean frequency, what you can create when your signal isn't corrupted, what you can build when your hands aren't dirty. It's going to shock you, not because you suddenly gained new abilities, because you're finally being given work that requires the abilities you've had all along, the abilities that clean frequency provides, the creative power that pure signal channels, the construction capacity that uncorrupted consciousness possesses. You've been operating in environments designed for dirty people, doing work that dirty hands can do, creating what corrupted frequency can create, and wondering why it all felt so limiting, so constrained, so far beneath what you sensed was possible. Now you're being given work that requires clean hands, that demands pure frequency, that can only be done by someone whose signal is uncorrupted. And you're going to discover that you're far more capable than you ever imagined, not because you changed, because you're finally operating in alignment with your actual frequency instead of degraded to match the corrupted environment around you. Clean people forced to work in dirty environments appear limited, appear constrained, appear less capable than they are, because they're constantly fighting the contamination instead of creating, constantly resisting corruption instead of building, constantly protecting their purity instead of expressing their power. But place a clean person in clean environment, give them work that requires purity, let them operate from their actual frequency. They become unstoppable, not because they're superhuman, because they're finally operating without the handicap of fighting contamination, finally creating without the interference of surrounding static, finally building without the limitation of corrupted materials. You're about to experience this, about to discover what you can actually do when you're not spending most of your energy maintaining purity in environments designed to corrupt everyone. The work ahead is clean work, sacred work, work that requires exactly what you've been protecting, and in doing that work, you'll finally understand why you had to stay so clean, why you had to refuse so much, why you had to walk away from so many opportunities that would have required you to compromise. Because those opportunities would have limited you, would have degraded your frequency to match their corrupted environment, would have reduced your capabilities to match their contaminated systems. You weren't meant for degraded work, you weren't built for corrupted systems, you weren't designed to operate in contaminated environments. You were meant for this, for clean work, for pure frequency creation, for uncorrupted consciousness expression. And now you're here, examined, chosen, confirmed, the only one clean enough to do what needs to be done, the only one pure enough to build what needs to be built, the only one uncorrupted enough to create what needs to be created. Everything you protected is about to pay dividends beyond anything you imagined. Everything you maintained is about to matter more than anything else. Everything you refused to compromise is about to become the foundation for work that changes everything. You're the clean one, the pure signal, the uncorrupted frequency. In a world drowning in dirt, you're pristine. In a system full of static, you're clear transmission. In an environment of corruption, you're intact truth. And that makes you the most powerful person in the room, not the most credentialed, not the most experienced, not the most connected, the most powerful. Because power flows through clean channels, because creation happens through pure frequency, because truth transmits through uncorrupted signal. You're the channel, the frequency, the signal, clean, pure, uncorrupted, ready. Own it. But a clean signal is meant to be broadcast. Don't keep this frequency to yourself. Share this video with the few who are ready to clear the static. Declare your purity in the comments, write "I am clean" so we can find each other in the noise. And to learn how to channel this power into reality, click the video on the screen right now. The transmission continues there.